We're back, baby. Horns up, talking Texas podcast. Fisher DeSopoulos, DJ Nikki Snacks Crider, the Quan Cosby. If you're listening on ESPN 102.7 Austin, what up? Happy game day to you guys listening on Saturday. What could be, what should hopefully be the last home game in Austin this year. That's the goal. Last home game in Austin this year.
No. That is not the goal, because if you go win the SEC, you're guaranteed a home game. Oh, no, you're not. I keep getting that.
We get a bye.
You get a bye, and then you go to the bowl games. I keep getting that wrong.
You just don't want to travel. That's what it is, Quan. You're just sick of traveling.
Listen, we need to win out. The hell with a home game, because I want to win the SEC, but I keep getting that wrong. You're right. That I am hoping this is the last home game. You're right. I'm actually cool with that. Screw that up.
That's what we get. Good. We last home game, hopefully, again for the against the Kentucky Wildcats. We're 20.5-point favorites, coming off a good win in Arkansas. We are number 3 right now in the CFP. Would be the number 2 seed. Obviously, Ohio State's number 2, but how it breaks down, Ohio State would be the 5 in the college football playoff. We would be the 2 seed. And now the Boo Birds are screaming louder than ever, as we were talking pre-show before we get into the Kentucky game. The Boo Birds are louder than ever. They're on our backs. The national media has not done us many favors. We'll kick it around the horn. Toss, we'll start with you, Q, then Nick. Just some thoughts on the current chatter around our program, specifically the painted picture of our strength of schedule and how that has maybe lifted us up or put us in the position where we're at now when many people don't think we should be there.
Well, we can say that many people don't think we should be there, but we are. There are people that are ranking us where we currently are as well. So, and also part of the reason why they're ranking us there is not only because of what we've done on the field, but how our team has been talked about since the beginning of the season from a personnel standpoint, from a consistency standpoint with the coaching staff. Talked about it before on the show. The only team in college football to retain the OC and the DC for the last 4 seasons. And I just think we're getting, I honestly don't have a ton to complain about, because I think we're getting the respect we deserve, given that we've won every single game we needed to outside of the Georgia game, which we lost at home to a good Georgia team who they are complaining about where they are based off of their strength of schedule and their opponents that they've had to face. But we know that. We know that this is the nature of the SEC. There's too many teams for every team in the SEC year in, year out to play the same level of opponents from a strength of schedule standpoint. Some years, some teams like us are going to have a quote unquote easier route, but you don't know that's the case until you actually play the games, because USC was supposed to be a really good football team this year, and here they are, and they're under 500, right? Michigan, we've talked about them, a team that we beat. We took care of business on the road at the Big House, and now they're 500. They're the reigning national champions. We didn't know that they weren't going to be good. We scheduled the game out of conference because we're trying to bolster our own strength of schedule, because we acknowledged that we weren't getting Alabama and LSU this season, but we will play them down the road. So I don't have a ton to complain about, and there's still a lot of football left to play. And at the end of the day, they can say whatever they want. But as we've talked about, we win out, we take care of business. We've got home field advantage in the SEC championship. So that's what we got to do.
And I said,
that would include a victory against a very talented Texas A&M team.
Yes.
And that's really, like, if you want to say what you want to say, just wait until we play A&M and then decide to have at it.
Yeah. And in the 2 of the teams you listed, like LSU lost to Florida. We beat Florida. We whooped Florida. Vandy we beat Vandy, and they beat Alabama. So we've discussed this in previous shows. Yes, maybe our strength of schedule is 38th right now. By the way, the Oregon Ducks is 43rd.
Ohio State 28, Penn State 35.
Yeah.
I mean,
Georgia's 1, right?
Oh my, Indiana. Indiana's the number 5 team in the nation. Their strength of schedule is 106th.
So I just feel as if winning cures all, I think, personally. I think at the end of the day, like if we win out, like we go and like you're saying, beat that, we win against Kentucky, which we cannot look ahead, which we have to maybe discuss that aspect of things. We can't look ahead against Kentucky, take care of business at home, go on the road to College Station, the most anticipated game of the year, potentially, for us at least. And then at the end of the day, like we've cured all almost in at least some capacity before we get to the postseason, because our strength of our remaining strength of schedule, it's 2 games, is number 5, which they're in that sense that they're valuing that A&M game on the road as a very, very tough opponent. But Q, you said you kind of disagreed with me pre-show that winning cures all. That
no. That's not what I disagree with. And the funny thing, Tosh, you're right as far as. And by the way, Nick, what did you say A&M's strength of schedule was?
A&M's is 24th.
So the irony of it, and that's right now, but let's be real, Missouri may end this season without being ranked either, because that's their one team that is still ranked in the college playoff. They're yapping, and I honestly, they played LSU. That is literally their signature win, I guess, in Missouri. And they hate us because they ain't us, let's be real, like we talked about. But it's no, my different opinion is this. It's amazing to me. We are gearing up. We even have a great year last year, and everybody's, oh, just wait till you get to the SEC. Well, we're in it. And the goalpost is moving. Now, who was sitting here saying, guys, pump your brakes. SEC is top heavy. You go into the bowl games for the last 15 years. Yeah, the SEC, Georgia, Bama has killed it. LSU, Joe Burrow, you're killed it. But the SEC is about 500 in bowl season every single year. So it takes a Texas to get in here and be decent for them to say, oh, no, the SEC is actually down. No, it's not down. It's what it always is. You have some top-heavy teams. Guess what? You know who one of the top-heavy teams is? It's the University of Texas. They are. A&M's having a pretty decent season. Now, their schedule, again, if you want to talk about ours, you talk about theirs. But then where I say the national media is not helping, and I think there's two lanes to it. One, oh, they haven't played a schedule. Well, they're haters anyway. But I actually think it's something else. They're doing themselves a disservice by saying we haven't played anyone when we're 9-1 and we have the number 1 defense. Anybody who's ever played the game, defense wins championships. Have our offense not had its best days some games? Sure. But you know what we haven't done? Is lost to Arkansas like Tennessee did, to Vandy like Bama did, to Florida like LSU did. We still have taken care of business. Yeah, to be a complete team, you have to have all of the pieces, and our defense is our leading piece. When our offense plays like it can, we're one of the best damn teams in the country, so acknowledge that. But I think it's even deeper than that. One, they moved the goalpost, but bigger. When you talk about Texas, we have one of the best fan bases. I went to a lot of away games this year. I went to Ann Arbor. Oh, let's not forget the college playoff football. Non-acknowledgement of Texas winning at the Big House, but a big win for Indy is against Michigan, moving the goalposts. When someone asked, and I was looking on Twitter, and they're like, have anybody noticed they're talking crap about Texas the last few weeks? Well, duh, because the clicks. We're in 2024, folks. If you look on Longhorn Twitter, if you look on Longhorn social media, if you look at the airports that are being shut down when Longhorn Nation goes there, they are incentivized to talk about UT because their viewership goes up 20%. So again, as much as we don't want to acknowledge the business of college football, UT being good and relevant, good or bad, or being talked about, it helps everyone in the business. Before UT became to the SEC, Feinbaum damn near every other week made a smart comment about UT people. They get fired up. They watch his show. They blow up his Twitter. He gets interactions, and that's the way the game works. On all of our phones, they're collecting data on who's watching, who's doing this. So that's we're clickbait. We always have been. They hate us because they hate us, but they love us, and they love when we're freaking relevant because we make all of their shows get more viewers, more eyeballs, and we literally go to the SEC. I told you when we lost to Georgia, I got texts from Arky fans, Tennessee fans, Florida fans, OU fans, A&M fans, And I'm laughing my butt off because the Tennessee fan actually hit me up and was like, well, they beat us too. And I said, yeah, you know what I didn't do is text you because I don't give a damn. We lost to them, and I'm more focused on our team. And they go, touche, you're not wrong. I actually text you. So that's what it is, man. It's a business ploy. The national people are using us for clicks.
Oh,
But the
100%.
local freaking A&Ms, they need to just shut up. We're going to play y'all in a couple of weeks. And then all bragging rights will be there. If you win, oh, that's going to suck. But you're going to have the rights. We kick your butt, you're going to have to shut up again, like you did when Justin Tucker did it to you.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's so interesting. You talk about moving the goalposts, and I think Indiana, we spoke about is getting some flack because now like the strength of schedule is a huge thing and something that people are focusing on in the college football playoff.
108th is what you said?
106 is it, right, Nick?
What was that?
It's 106, right?
The schedule is 106
for Indiana.
Yeah,
106. Yeah.
I mean, what about one of our least favorite teams, Notre Dame? Theirs is 82nd. Like, is it not a bigger story that they don't join a conference?
I think it's. Yeah. I think the strength of schedule thing is a means for teams and universities that aren't making it or have some reason to whine. That's what it's all about. You know, obviously, if you're a good team, you take care of business against whoever you play against. There are 7 teams in the top 25 that have a top 25 strength of schedule. So that means that there's another 18 teams that aren't in the top 25 strength of schedule. So like boohoo, you know what I mean? In the top 10, Georgia and Bama are the only 2 teams that have a top 25 strength of schedule, basically. So it's for me, it's just about taking care of business just based on your schedule. Like, don't whine about who is scheduled and who you beat and who you couldn't beat. I mean, if we're playing that game, then how come, people aren't arguing the fact that Tennessee lost to Arkansas and we just whooped Arkansas, right? And
by double digits. Now all of a sudden a 10-point win doesn't mean anything anymore.
Right. And Vandy beat Bama. We beat Vandy. So like,
I think, Nick, what you're saying, and I would love Toss to I know you got to roll, so we're so focused on the things we can't control. We just scheduled Notre Dame. They're pretty freaking good. They're ranked high. We schedule them when they're ranked high. We schedule Michigan when they're ranked high. Ohio State's always in the mix. All of these people. Alabama last year. We schedule people. LSU when they did Joe Burrow. We schedule it when we schedule it. We can't control it at that point. I think Kyle Umlang said it best. The hell with who you freaking schedule and who you beat. Let's pay way more attention to the loss. We lost to a team that has the number 1 strength of schedule on the deal, who started the year. They're not there now. They're still in the mix as number 1. That is our only loss. We can't control that other teams don't live up to their height, but that is our only loss. Bama lost to Vandy. Tennessee lost to Arky, who apparently doesn't matter anymore. A&M lost to South Carolina and freaking Notre Dame. Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois or somebody. And so
at home.
I think we need to pay way more attention to who the losses are. Oregon hadn't lost to anybody, but their strength of schedule is in the 40s or something like that. But they'll play somebody in the championship game. So I think that's a better conversation than who you supposedly beat, because with NIL, the game has changed and you have to show up every day and find a way. And a lot of these SEC teams have figured that out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's also worth noting, and a lot of talking heads have mentioned this, that the committee is playing it safe right now because they don't have enough data and they don't have enough of these important games that are yet to come to weigh in from a decision-making standpoint. Like, there's
2 more games in the regular season though, Toss.
I know, plus conference championships. Like, it's not a lot of season left, but there are very, very important games that will iron out who falls where, who gets these buys. And they set up the system, right? And these 4 conference champions are going to get the buys. And so it's interesting, like, the first week these rankings came out, it was, okay, why aren't we just basing the rankings as to who's at the top of the conferences, because the conference champions are getting those guaranteed 4 spots anyway? Why are we like mixing and matching what the rankings are with where the predictions are? the whole system is interesting and it's new and we're accounting for that. The way that I look at it is like, I try not to pay attention to anything that the little brother or our whatever we want to call them, our little cousin or whatever, any of those other teams in Texas, whatever familial relation you want to assign to it, like, it's fine with me. They're not at the same level as us, and that's just the fact of the matter. And everyone has something to say about everything. I try and simplify it for myself, and it's like, who do I watch? And as much as I watch, who do I recognize as the teams that are the most talented? And if anyone is to complain in my mind, it would be Georgia, because they've lost 2 games. But as you're talking about the losses, let's look at the losses. The losses that they've had are to 2 real quality teams. And the SEC, the top of the SEC, is really, it's a bunch of studs, honestly. And that's the way that it typically is. And it's different than the Big Ten. The SEC and the Big Ten, they like to look at each other and say we're the same, especially Big Ten. And now that we're a part of the SEC, we can be real honest about this. Like, it's not the same. It's not. And we are in the most difficult conference. And the conversation around the 4, 5, 6 teams that are in the mix in the college football playoff is not going to change for the next 10 years or even past that, until they change it to a 14 playoff. And then we'll, of course, have to account for that. But it's just the one thing I don't want to see, and the one thing that, Nick, you in our group text, you were like, that's clickbait. On3 predicted that we're not making the college football playoff because we're going to lose to A&M in the regular season, which means that we won't make the SEC championship, and then we won't be an at-large bid. Okay. But they also had in their scenario that A&M beats us, then loses in the conference in the SEC championship, and still doesn't make the playoff. And I know it's just one outlet and one outlet saying that. But to me, I'm like, what's the point? As long as the conference championships matter to the committee's decision. Of course, the team that wins, they get the bye. But if the team that loses is not getting some amount of reward for losing to a good team, what's the point of even going to the game? Like, can you abstain? Can you just say, no, I don't want to play the game? We'll give you the W, but we don't take an L for it or something like that. That's the one thing I'm locked in on. And if they don't if they dock someone for playing in an SEC championship or any conference championship and putting up a good fight, if you get railroaded, okay, maybe there's a different conversation that we need to have. But that's what I'm keyed in on right now. And of course, for us, for our Longhorns, it's just take care of business for the next 2 weeks, and then we get to the SEC championship. But
I agree with you wholeheartedly, actually, because if things don't go, let's say we beat Kentucky, let's say we lose the game we don't want to lose, fine. And we'll worry about whether we're in or not. If in the hypothetical that A&M beats us, if they lose the SEC championship, and as long as they don't get absolutely smoked, they should go. Even if it's 3 losses, they went to the SEC championship. You shouldn't be penalized for going to your conference championship. I don't think. If you're one of those teams, if we're considering the SEC and the Big Ten the 2 best dogs, like, what happens if Ohio State loses to Oregon again? Like, that's a plausibility, right? Like, they could play again in the Big Ten championship. I mean, if they split it, then things get really interesting. But if Ohio State loses, they're a 2-loss team. They've lost to the same team twice. Are they bumped?
I think one of the problems with, I get what you're saying, Toss, but one of the issues with whoever said that is the same issue with preseason rankings. You're talking about something. If we were to lose that game, they can't predict where A&M will go. A&M might go. A&M, if they win this week, we win this week. They beat Auburn. They might be number 12 next week. And then if they beat us, they might jump down to number 7. And so I think it's hard to predict where they're going, because we also don't know what's going to happen with all the other games. And so I get that would be crazy. I'm with you from a conceptual standpoint that I think both teams in the conference championships, they're the best teams in the conferences. They got there, and there should be some merit with that. It's contradictory to say, oh, strength of schedule, but this extra game that you earn because you are in the conference championship, sorry, we're going to knock you out because somebody with the 88th strength of schedule. It's so much of it is all contradictory. It's the damn world we live in.
And in that scenario, and again, my criticism is not of On3 for putting it out there. They put it out there so we could talk about it, and that's what we're doing now. So shout out to them. I'm just saying, in the hypothetical, if the committee actually ends up weighing in that capacity, it's going to be frustrating for me personally. Maybe not for some people, but in that scenario, they had Ole Miss and Georgia making it as at-large bids and Alabama winning the SEC championship. So in that scenario, as Josh is pointing out, he feels that A&M, even though they would have 3 losses, only 2 in conference, and 1 would be against Notre Dame, week 1, that they wouldn't make it, but a 2-loss Georgia team would, and a 2-loss Ole Miss team, neither of which played in the SEC championship, would then get the benefit of not playing at that game and still getting the at-large bid. And
we have Georgia friends who are excited about this. One of our friends from Georgia was like, cool, we lost to Ole Miss. We're kind of right where we want to be.
Yeah, which is crap. And that's what
you're saying, right, Toss? That's crap.
It is what I'm saying, and it's only crap in my mind if you're not willing to say and admit, if as the committee, that the SEC is the best conference, and that means that A&M, Texas, Georgia, Ole Miss, and whoever wins the SEC, Alabama in that case, all belong in the college football playoff. And like,
they can't.
You're not going to tell me. I know they can't do that, but if you're talking about the 12 best teams, like in that scenario, I've watched football enough this year to tell you that those teams would boat race SMU, and I want SMU in the college football playoff. Part of me is like, it's 2 different things, right? It's like, do I want Boise State in there? Yes. If they win their conference, should they get in there? Yes. Do I think that Texas is a better team than Boise State? Yes.
Oh, yeah.
It's
well, this is my question. We get to the SEC championship and we lose that. We're still in. We do realize that, right? So I think
I personally believe that if we win next week, we're in no matter what. If we're in today, if we would beat Kentucky, that's what I mean. We're in no matter what. I think if
they might blow it up into more of a conversation. So, they're gonna turn it into a conversation. But
again, they need the clicks. That makes sense.
I hope what your guys are saying is correct. I'm a little afraid that some of this strength of schedule conversation that's happening now is to account for that kind of situation then happening, where the loser of a conference championship can have that case built against them. Like, well, you didn't really beat anyone else.
They can't admit it's a business. I will say that because I'm with.
You want Texas in the first 12.
You want Texas in it. It's a blue blood world. My bigger question is this: I was so freaking fired up when we went to a 12-team playoff, but yet we're having a lot of the same damn conversations when it was 4.
Yeah.
And for me, as much as I think you'll get annoyed, I'm a little frustrated because we're still having a lot of. I don't know that they structured it right. Because we're still having a lot of the same conversations we had when it was a top 4, to where it's almost pageantry. And it's like the at-large pieces of it is still going to be somewhat of a selection. Yeah. And you know who's going to get the nod more than not is those in the burnt orange, because of a lot of things we've talked about. But I don't know if that – I do think we pass the eye test. We're one of the top, in my opinion. I take it to another level. I think we're certainly one of the top 2 teams, best teams. Again, our defense is number 1. Our offense is top 10. Our offense even gets close to anything else. We're truly one of the statistical and wins and losses top teams in the country. But it's still fascinating to me that we're having
impact too, with just the university itself, the eyes that it draw. I mean, like you said, Q, it's a business, and there's no way they're going to keep a 1-loss or a 2-loss Texas team out of the first ever 12-team playoff.
When there's 6 other teams who have 2 losses, right. They're going to get the nod more times than not if there's multiple teams with 2 losses. And nothing against even the Georgias and Alabamas, but there's a little bit of fatigue on those deals. I've talked to Bama fans, even going to the Sugar Bowl or something else, and they're like, we've been there many of times. So we're still back. We're honest about. We're back in the mix. We're very relevant again. We went to the playoffs last year. We know what New Orleans was. It was insane. And quite frankly, we show up to every bowl game, whether it's the blah, blah bowl or, one of the top ones. And so we do have that going in a positive way for us. But I'm still fascinated, again, that we're having these conversations with 12 teams.
Yeah, well, we're gonna have these conversations no matter how many teams are in. I feel like there's just too many damn teams in college football.
Every other league, from Pee Wee to high school to Division II, and the schools who do it, the NFL, they kind of but don't really have these. They have a playoff system.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a play. It's a playoff system that's based off. Right. That is just strictly based off win-loss.
Right.
And it's really detailed out. There's no This is a
There's
selection.
No opinions. The issue with college football
is still kind of a selection.
It's completely subjective. College football.
I'm talking about ours.
Subjective.
Oh, ours is a selection. Yes, ours is
ours is a selection. It's not a playoff system. No, the NFL is based off wins and losses.
Right.
But it's also a lot different teams and all that measure.
Right. The league. That's the whole crux of this, right? Is like you're a 1A football
32
school.
teams.
You're 1A, you play 1A. You're 3A, you play 3A. I just compared Texas, whose endowment, whose enrollment is completely, whose athletics funding is completely different than Boise State, yet those two teams could play each other in a playoff game, right? Like that's the discrepancy between the NFL and the NBA and college football.
Yeah.
College basketball has a system for it, but again, it's a completely different game, right? Like you can't have the same amount of games that you have in college basketball that you have in college football to prove who's better, right? The more games you get, the more sample size. And that way you can say, okay, I have more to assess, more data to look at and say, we thought Texas was the best team. Well, they played 50 games against 50 opponents, and we really do know. It's like we just can't do that.
Screw it. 64 teams in the
they've talked about that though. They've talked about that, which is just like not even at that point. Honestly, at that point, 64 teams is just not safe, in my opinion. Like I hate to be like the loser of the group. I just don't think it's safe. I don't think it's safe for the players.
Because there's over 100 high schools, even if you're 2A, 3A, 4A, 5A, there's over 100 high schools. I mean, how do they break that down? And they go by district, blah, blah, blah. I think they play 16 games. You can go 16-0. Well, hell, I mean, we're at what? 14, 15?
12, It'd be 12. It'd be 15, right? Because it's 12.
It's one less game.
It is 16, right? Aren't we going to finish the season once with Kentucky and
A&M?
We'll have to play 12 games. Then an SEC championship would be 13, and then 3 more games if we win it all.
That's 16. It's 16 the same games. As high school.
Yeah,
so high
school's got 64 teams.
Oh, they do have 64?
Yeah, 64 teams.
And they play 16 games.
And that's in each division too.
But
right?
you know what they don't have is they take out the bye. So you play like the worst of the worst that first round, get a home game, and then you go from. It's almost the same thing. They might need to think about 64.
Well, if there's as long as there's a selection committee in these conversations, I think people felt that the conversations would kind of dissipate by adding more teams.
People have biases. As long as it's a selection, they're gonna be biased. Now Booger, he was biased for the SEC all the time, but now all of a sudden Texas is in the mix. They probably didn't offer him. He's pissed off, and now he's forget Texas. They're not playing anybody.
I just don't think it's the biggest. It's blatant clickbait because I don't think it's the biggest story. I think there are a lot of bigger stories in college football than our strength of schedule. Quite frankly, like why not
the fact that they're even talking about us versus a Notre Dame who lost to Northern Illinois, that is insane to me.
Who refuses to join a conference, by the way, which is at this point blasphemous.
Well,
you can't get a bye.
It works for them. It works against them, as we've always said. It's worked for them and it works against them because if they lose this game to Navy, there's no possible way they will make the college football playoff.
They're done.
I mean, yeah, but they're not losing to Navy.
They lost to Northern Illinois at home. I don't know.
That's a good point. I mean, that's a good point. That's a very good point. But that's also why you have to play the game, though. In my opinion, this strength of schedule stuff, I get the conversation, but we have seen in the SEC these big time teams. The Georgia, I put it like this: Tennessee, wherever their strength of schedule is, they didn't predict them losing to Arkansas. Georgia's okay. Bama, they didn't predict them losing to Vandy. And so Bama has a top 10 strength of schedule. I promise you, Vandy wasn't a part of it, and that's somebody they lost to. Their strength of schedule had to do with the other teams they were playing, the Tennessees, the Georgias, the LSUs. And so and LSU, hell, Vandy's better than LSU. So it's so hard to predict certain levels of that when teams, you're an injury away from being a very different team.
Are they better than LSU?
I don't think so.
Is LSU better than Vandy? I'm sorry.
No, I think Vandy's better than LSU, in my opinion.
This year, yeah, for sure. Brian Kelly stinks, bro. He's the
Brian
worst.
Kelly's garbage.
Well, garbage. It's like who has the better quarterback? Nussmeier hasn't been great, but I still think
he has a better quarterback.
I don't think so. I mean,
NFL.
NFL
see him College Station.
NFL scouts would disagree with you, Quan, but
and the scouts get quarterbacks right all the time.
Nobody does. That's the whole thing.
That's the joke of it. Yeah,
that's the position they suck at all the time. Quarterback is their worst.
I
go with measurables in the NFL.
I have to jet. The only closing thought I have is that we're going to beat the Wildcats, and it's going to be handily, and we're going to cover. That's what I've got.
Love it.
But look, at the end of the day, we talked about for 30 minutes this new playoff system. So, and people are talking about the strength of schedule. It'll make us lock in, and the fans lock in even more on that A&M game. And we just talked about Notre Dame, Navy. Everybody's talking about this Ohio State, Indiana game. Like, it's making things really exciting. And it's been a great college football season. I think that's why everybody's so animated about it. So I can't complain in that respect, but I'm glad that we're on the right side of it right now. And hopefully we stay on that. So I'm out of here. Hook 'em.
All right,
Adios, amigo. The beauty of it, like Toss said, every game has felt like a playoff game for a lot of these teams. Like at this point in the season, if you had 2 losses, 3 losses, like I'm looking at teams like the South Carolina Gamecocks who have a really tough strength of schedule, who look really strong week in and week out. And they have 2 more games left. One of them is at Clemson. Like, it's not likely, but maybe. Like,
maybe what? Dude,
maybe they're not large bid. Maybe. I'm just saying.
That. I was about to say, bro,
Can't
I think,
happen.
and I talked to the Talking Heads, and they're talking about Ole Miss being the hottest team. I'm calling BS. The hottest team in the SEC in theory right now is South Carolina. South Carolina's good, dude. They should have, and again, shoulda, coulda, woulda. We should have played better versus Georgia, but they imploded versus LSU.
They got hurt.
They lost a weird rivalry game versus GT. That team could very well be in the mix with one loss and just, hit a really quality schedule. So you're right. They could win out, and who knows, right? They're dangerous, and they passed the look test, which is why I still don't agree with selection versus it being a real playoff.
I don't know. I feel like it's tough because their losses are LSU, Ole Miss, and Bama, right? And if there's a 2-loss Bama team or a 2-loss Ole Miss team, they're not going to put them in over them.
I agree. 100%. You're right. You're 100% right. The only thing I'll say on South Carolina's behalf,
and they're playing against Wofford this weekend too, so like
I understand. The one thing I'll say on their behalf, as far as like they add to the strength of the SEC, in my opinion, like they're maybe not in that tier 1, but they're definitely in tier 2. They should have beaten LSU had their quarterback not gotten hurt. Their biggest blemish, they lost a close one in Alabama. Their biggest blemish is at home versus Ole Miss the week after a couple weeks after he was injured or something. And, I think that was a tough one for them. That was tough for them. But outside of that, they're a really dangerous team. And I don't think they're even being discussed enough. And we're maybe even lucky that they have 3 losses because they are one of the hottest teams. And you don't want to see teams hot late.
I wouldn't want to play. So if you name Ole Miss, which by the way, their D-line is pretty damn good. It's
nasty.
Really good. They're pretty good. I don't put it like this. I don't know if you say, would you rather see Ole Miss or South Carolina? I promise you, I would rather see Ole Miss. And I'm telling you because our kryptonite is running quarterbacks. Now we did a hell of a job versus Green last week, and we did a really, really good job versus old boy from Vandy. But they don't run like old dude from South Carolina. That offense is really good. And I would put our DBs in secondary and our defensive lines pressure. Ole Miss defense is really good. We're the number 1 defense in the country. And
they're really good though. They're getting hot too.
Oh no, they're really, really good. But we're the number 1 defense in the country. So our kryptonite is a running quarterback, and I would argue South Carolina has one of the best running quarterbacks / playmakers in the country. And we saw it versus A&M. A&M has a good defense, but he made them look pretty silly. They had them at 300 yards on that defense. So it just goes to say you evolve in certain ways. Mm-hmm. Teams look this way, that way. You have to play the games. You have to win your games. So half of this conversation, I get it. I know why we're doing it. We're talking about it. But even without the UT bias, I think some of it is just bull crap.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, too, like you've been harping on us having the best defense, which is just true. And I think ultimately you're right. Whoever wins the national championship, like last year, by the way, it's going to be the team with the best defense.
With the best
by the
defense.
way, like how many times has that been the case in the last 2 decades? Almost
Georgia's,
every time.
Alabama's. I
Every
mean,
time.
they had the best defenses. You get more opportunities. Your offense look damn good when they're going 3 and out every time.
Yeah.
And so that's what I keep talking about. And that's my only issue with the national people. Fan bases, we're going to say what we're going to say. Let's be real. Everybody's going to have their bias. They're going to have their angle. Somehow I got tagged on some deal where they can't quit talking about this. But the national talking heads, my issue with them, especially some of them who are defensive players, is how can you talk about SOS and not talk about the real stats of, yeah, you know what? Texas hadn't scored quite as much, even though they beat somebody by 10 in a rivalry game that, Tennessee lost to, who you're giving credit to. But you know what? Our one loss was against Georgia. And even Georgia, we had 3 turnovers and they had less than 300 yards of total offense.
Yeah.
Our defense is legit.
I think when it comes down to it, the real people who know ball, they look at that Georgia game and they don't see it the way everyone else sees it as a 2-touchdown loss, right? Just a score, right?
And the problem is we had 4 turnovers.
Yeah,
I think
you broke it down like the unluckiness that we had in the first half was out of control. Like that can't be left unsaid, right? And then we dominated them in the second half. So really, if we played 2 of those second halves, that's a completely different outcome. And obviously that's football, so you have to play 4 quarters. But regardless, I think that the real people who know ball know that Georgia loss isn't necessarily characteristic of who we really are.
Well, Nick, you literally hit the nail on the head, but that's what we talked about earlier. The goalpost moves for Texas. What do they say versus Georgia versus Alabama? Well, they actually dominated them worse. Alabama beat the brakes off of Georgia and made them look silly in the first half. Well, Georgia came storming back and gave a run for it. You give them credit for their run back. They still took an L, but then we outscored them. We played better in the second half. Oh, well, and honestly, that 4th turnover was the difference in us going to tie that game up.
Right.
And so it's funny because that's why I say I crack up how the goalpost consistently moves when you're talking about the good old Longhorns. But that's what we know. We know how it is. And like we've said a million times, the hell with them. We take care of our business. It'll work itself out. We beat the brakes off of Kentucky. We go, oh my goodness, beat the brakes off of those cats in College Station. And then it will all work itself out.
100%. I mean, obviously, we got 2 more weeks left of the regular season. Once that's over with, no one can say anything. Like if we win those 2 games, there's nothing they can say, right? It's a 1-loss Texas team. That was the same.
Then it's the rear view mirror
last year, right? It was a 1-loss Texas team, and we were in the 4-team college playoff.
Yeah,
100%. In the Big 12, by the way, not the SEC,
right?
Which is considerably easier, and as the Big 12, if anything, has gotten better with the addition of other teams booing.
Yeah, well, BYU and Colorado are the 2 teams that could potentially win that.
Colorado's in. That's another special one.
That's number 1 and 2 right now. BYU, Colorado,
Arizona State, and BYU are playing for a spot. Like Arizona State's also like sneaky playing for a spot against BYU. Like Arizona is the number 21 team. We could blink and they could be the number 4 team in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That's how much volatility is in that. There's less volatility in the SEC, but that's how much volatility is going on in the other conferences.
Yeah. And by the way, you said if Notre Dame could beat Navy, they still got to beat Army. And Army's an undefeated rank.
Army's the better one. Army, I was going to say Navy's not very good. Army's actually balling this year.
Yeah.
I mean, if the Army went into Notre Dame and took them out, I mean, that'd be the most electric thing of everyone wants that.
Oh,
everyone wants no one that's the thing. There's so many other bigger stories. Notre Dame, I think Penn State, you could lop in with us very easily. I think Indiana, to me, the biggest story, and I texted the other guys about this too. Maybe
if Army goes into South Bend, beats Notre Dame, and then obviously they beat UTSA easy, and they take care of Navy in the last game of the season, shouldn't they be in?
Yes. If an undefeated Army team who beats the number 6 team in the nation in South Bend, how could they not go in?
Right.
They have to go in.
I mean, they're 19 right now. So you imagine if they beat Army this week, they're at least climbing to probably the 13-12 range. So you're
oh my God. If they beat the number 6 team on the road, like you have to take that seriously. And it's also our
they
like,
probably
also literally
they'd be an
represent our
ad.
nation.
They would get in my opinion.
They represent our nation. Like,
yeah, that would be pretty cool.
You're going to be the college football committee that leaves the army, the literal army out. You're going to leave our army out of this. That is like the most disrespectful thing I've ever heard.
An undefeated army team. Sorry.
Yeah,
sorry,
like,
Florida State.
like, all right, good luck protecting the nation now. It's like that'd be such like a selfish, blasphemous move. I will say, honestly,
hey, we don't need the army to strike.
Yeah, exactly. We don't need them to turn on us. The last thing we need. Before we get into our team, I did want to say one huge story. It was a text conversation I had in another group. And I think I maybe texted y'all about this. To me, the underrated biggest story right now that no one's talking about is Lincoln Riley. And what an absolute botch. Money aside, and I know it's a ton of money. What an absolute botch.
Yeah.
He left a great thing in Oklahoma.
Yeah. He left a great thing in Oklahoma and also brought a great thing over to USC and still wasn't able to get it done. You brought Caleb Williams over and one of your stud wide receivers.
The first overall pick.
And
Heisman Trophy winner.
One of my buddies was like, "Oh, you can't put money aside. He'll get hired somewhere else." But like, who's going to hire him now? Like, his value has to be depreciated.
Oh no one. He's trying to get to the league now.
NFL.
Jerry Jones might, but the man, it's so disappointing, right? But he's that bad. They're that bad. It was never a bit. It was the weirdest. I think a horrible decision. And this is us as Longhorns saying that. They are. I mean, you should see. You say not a lot of people are talking about it, dude. Lindell White is talking about it. Yep. The freaking USC greats are all over it, and they're annoyed. They're disgusted because one, he's not. The team isn't playing for him. I think after a game, he was like, "Oh, we're so close," and they're like, "What? What are you watching?" Like, at least don't pee down my back and tell me it's raining. And then the other freaking people that actually are talking about it, and he loves we used to be Feinbaum's like guy, the team that he loves yapping about, talking down. He wasn't wrong back then. Let's be honest. We needed to work back and get good again. Lincoln Riley is his new beating rug.
Yeah.
He weekly says he needs to get fired.
I just think that
some people are talking about
I just think that there was really, in my mind, like obviously with Caleb aside, there's no way it was going to work out at USC. They just do not know how to put together a good defense. It's like their offense last year was electric. You know, they've even had flashes of it this year too. But the playing field is just so much different than when it was when you were in college, Q, when they were in multiple national championships with Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart. Every single one of their defenders, Polamalu, Malaluga, Clay Matthews, like
Keith
Rivers.
There's so many.
They had insane athletes playing defense, but now defense comes out east, southeast. They go up north. That's where defense plays. There's no defense on the West Coast anymore.
Well, but the weird thing is they are in that conference. They're in the Big Ten, which is also why they're taking L's. Or let's talk about that other elephant. And I guess we can't say. What we can't say is, oh, they're traveling so far. They have no Oregon. They're number one team in the country right now.
Yeah.
Now, Ohio State did come to them versus going on the road, and we'll see overall long term how that takes its toll. But Oregon's kind of defying that piece of it. I thought those teams are going to struggle because of the travel, and I'm sure Lincoln has used that as an excuse, but you can't. He hasn't used it a lot because Oregon's the number one team in the country taking care of business.
I mean, yeah, I mean they're a team that's blatantly any place, anytime. Like that's how their mentality is. And you talk about defense going to the southeast and going to the north. I'm aligned, but at the end of the day, like, look where our program was at. Like, we brought in Sark as our Lincoln Riley, who was, quite frankly, less of a commodity and less of a proven fact. It was just less of a proven coach, way less of a proven coach. They brought in Lincoln Riley, who had been to multiple college football playoffs, who had been to how many Heisman guys and number one overall picks that he produced at OU. Yes, the defense. I watched. I was at a ton of those games. Their defense was horrible. How many times I hit y'all? I'm like, this is sad. No one's at the game. That's another piece of it. The defense stinks, It was just a pathetic showing all across the board. But at the end of the day, it's still USC. They did bring in their big fish, and their program got worse.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Lincoln Riley per stripes on the wall when we got Sark had more. But the reality is, who's a better fit? USC's the Blue Bloods. It's not always about the big freaking names. It's about who's the best fit. Caleb DeBoer, listen, when Jalen Milroe is gone, that's when I'm going to start judging him. Your quarterback that special, some of the pieces that Saban brought that didn't leave are big deals. And once those leadership pieces, not even about just athletically, those leadership pieces, we're going to see what he can do following a Nick Saban. Kudos. He lost some big ones this year. Let's be honest. That Nick Saban don't typically lose. So it's already showing some crack in that foundation with a Jalen Milroe. When you lose someone like him and a few more of those pieces and he pisses somebody off and they freaking transfer, we're going to see. So it's about, at the Blue Blood schools, it's about the best fit. And even the other ones. You can go, I grew up in the Waco area. Is my man a fit? Golly, I saw him do an interview the other day. And I was just like, that was painful. What's Baylor's coach? LSU defensive coordinator?
Aranda's gone.
Aranda, God.
Is he not gone?
No, but they lost again the other day, and it was a halftime. The announcers even say, in typical Aranda, no emotions way. And I'm going, oh my goodness, that was brutal. They need to go get RG3. But no,
RG3 wants some money right now. I don't know if what you just said like on his podcast the other day, but he was basically saying how like Baylor made $500 million basically after his Heisman season, and he thinks he deserves some money after that.
I mean, he's not wrong.
He's not.
They did build stadiums, and I was listening to something that was really cool, and they were talking about Deion's impact at Colorado. They said, sure, stadiums are now full. Their TV coverage are 2 years ago, they had the number one watch football game in all of college ball. All of this stuff. But that's not what actually moves the needle from a higher ed standpoint. Colorado had 67,000 applicants for school last year. Colorado before then would average 30, maybe even 20. I remember when growing up in the Waco area, Baylor's enrollment was like 12,000. Baylor's up to like 16, 17,000, even from the RG. The next year after Baylor, after RG3 won that, they had 20-some thousand applicants because you get TV exposure. The young kids get to see you. They like what they're seeing. People look like they're having fun. And so they made $500 million for sports only. If you count all the rest of the stuff that happens in those Waco's opened 14 hotels since that. Between him and Chip and Joe, it's freaking big. So I do get his argument. I don't know that he's going to get a fraction.
No, for sure.
They should meet in the middle and give him the next head coaching job.
He's got a case for sure when it comes to like Reggie Bush and him and Cam Newton, like what those guys did for the universities and putting them on the map. I mean, how many times do you hear kids say like, oh, I picked this school because I wanted to go to a good sports university. I want to go to a good football university. Like not because they play, but because Josh is one of them. You know, he almost went to Northwestern.
Dude, I was about to go. Not almost. I was literally about to sign. I was like, let me check this thing out. And I was like, yo, I'm not doing a trimester. I'm not going to these bogus ass games. I'm not doing it. They took the theater kids on a tour of the stadium. They didn't care. Me and my dad were like at Texas and jaw at the floor. That was a huge reason.
That was 10 years ago when the stadium doesn't look like what it looks like now.
Oh, no. Now it's fucking. Yeah.
I think they should give RG3. I don't think it's crazy because look what Deion's done. There was rumors of Ray Lewis being the head coach. They shot it down at FAU, and I'm like, if you're FAU,
they fired Tom Herman.
See ya. That'd fall from grace. If you're FAU, why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah, what do you have to lose?
Like, why would? What do you've nothing? That's the thing. Like Baylor, you went and you got the hot DC from LSU.
Yeah, but no. Didn't FSU? No, that may have been an outbound school. You have to be able to afford them. Ray Lewis has plenty of money. Deion has plenty of money. Deion makes way less. If he ends up going to the Big 12 championship, he's going to be like the lowest paid person in the champ. Deion only makes like $4 million. I'll say only
because he doesn't need it.
But coaches are getting paid 10.
Yeah,
and
he doesn't need
so
it.
Ray Lewis is going to at least be 5 or 6, and FAU needs a coach that needs to make 2. And so it's more of that piece of it, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, look, Julian Lewis is a 5-star quarterback recruit, committed to Lincoln Riley and USC. Committed, just decommitted.
He ain't going.
Just decommitted. He's not. Well, he's not going there. You know where he's considering now? 2 schools, I think. I'm pretty sure it's just Georgia and just Colorado.
That's what I'm saying. Hey, and Shadur's gone. So I mean, I'm just saying.
You're gonna tell me that's a bad hire and that's a gong show and a circus?
And he turned
that's
around
one of the
too.
hires.
They're a team that's inches away from getting to the Big 12 championship.
Bro, from a one win
season,
team to exposure through the roof, and year 2 potentially going to. And by the way, you got in a harder conference.
And you're gonna have you're probably gonna have 2 top 5 picks in the NFL draft this year.
Yeah.
At worst 5.
Maybe a Heisman Trophy winner this year too.
Yeah.
Probably.
So I think colleges especially need to figure it out. That's just some extra stuff that you can add. And we know what, again, no different than what, the national folks are doing with UT, talking smack, getting their clicks. Deion Sanders gets his clicks. I mean, he really does. I mean, I can't open up my phone without Colorado unsolicited freaking being pushed to my dang phone.
Yeah.
I'm over it. Love Deion. But I don't want to hear about Colorado.
I just think that these days, though, like when it comes down to it, if you're making a hire, like you just got to get with the times. You can't. There's like gone are the days where you're hiring the cheese balls. Like you're telling me you look at Aranda and you think to yourself, "Oh yeah, kids want to play for that guy."
That's a good point. I mean, we hate to beat them down, but it's just true. Listen, I still get haircuts and the same spot in Waco, and some of those kids come in and I don't even know it. And of course, we're in there yapping, talking about everything under the sun. And there's been more than enough kids kind of walk out with a smirk, and then my barber, Matt, be like, "Hey, he played for Baylor." And I'm busting out laughing. I was like, you know what he didn't do? Is argue with a word I said.
Yeah. He agreed with everything.